And they want to test your network, they want to bring it down.
Why should I care about troubleshooting at all?
And I know that you as an experienced CCIE, you don't need that. Awesome! You're with us! Sophia, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you, Steven, and welcome guys again to our basement.
Welcome back indeed. And as you can see, we are really excited today because we have an amazing guest with us. And this guest is going to tell us and update us on all the changes and developments that have been happening in the wireless industry.
Yes, absolutely. Well, obviously, wider expansion of Wi-Fi 6 as well as 5G are kind of a big things in mind, not only for wireless professionals, but also for the business. So how these technologies are going to coexist together, would both stay relevant, and how it might impact client devices. These are the things that we're going to talk about.
So this is a little hint, Sophia. You're telling me that our guest knows everything about client devices.
Oh yes, he knows. Well, our guest of honor is actually a principal engineer in Cisco Wireless Business Unit. He is CWNE number 45. He's a Cisco Live Hall of Fame speaker, and he also worked a lot on different courses, video courses, including Cisco ones and vendor independent like CWNP. And he also holds more than 150 patents. Can you imagine that, Steven? By the way, how many patents do you hold?
I have one patent, and I was really proud of that. 150, that's an impressive number, I agree. So talking about those courses, I have a little story about that. When I was training for my wireless certification, my CWNP wireless, I was using material called CBT nuggets. And there was videos, and you see a white screen and just a marker. You don't see the speaker, but you could hear the accent. It was a speaker with a very nice French accent that was talking you through all the developments of the wireless industry. And I did my training courses, and I loved it. I loved the training material. It was good. It was a good sense of humor and all that. Years later, I am working for Cisco. I'm in San Jose, where our headquarters are. And it's an event, 70, 80 people there, the all hands. And a speaker gets introduced onto the stage. And I hear him talking, and he was talking like this, eh? And I was like, I know that voice. So I look at his name and I Google and I see in the course, I'm like, that's the guy that I actually learned my certification material with. So with that, I am really honored to introduce for the third time in my life, Jérôme Henry.
Thank you, Steven. And yeah, I've been trying to hide my accent for years. And I have the same accent in all the language I try to speak, so it's a disaster. So nice to be with you. And now you've become the expert, so I look up to you now. It's a great to be here with you.
Oh wow, that is. I feel a lot of honor now. Thank you. I wouldn't say that I'm the expert, not at all. No, but very honored to have you with us, Jerome. So, Jerome, you've received the IT Training Award. You've been the best instructor. You achieved the Cisco Live Hall of Fame, and this year you're also a speaker at Cisco Live, even though it's digital. But lately you're working a lot on location-based services and OpenRoaming. Is that correct?
Yeah. What I try to do, I'm in the CTO office for wireless here at Cisco, and what I do is to try to look at technologies that could improve the experience of the device, your clients in the Cisco cell. And my horizon is about 3 to 5 years. So yeah, recently I've been looking a lot into location technologies to try to see how we can provide a blue dot on your phone with an accuracy below 1 meter, so that when you are in a hardware store, we can tell you if you're looking at a 1 centimeter nails versus a 2 centimeter nails, and guide you to the right spot. A lot of promising things are happening in that field. Can't tell you much about it yet, but it's coming.
But on that, because I know we've been working on this for quite some time already, and we had the hyperlocation. And one of the challenges that we have is actually the MAC address hashing that Apple is doing now in the new iOS. How are we solving that? I mean, that must be a big challenge.
It is and it is not, because I think it's a change of culture. To be honest, we've been using the MAC address for the last 40 years very differently from what it was intended to. It was just intended to avoid collisions when you plug into a new network. And then we said, oh, it's a unique representation of a station, therefore a user. And then we've been using it, to derive tons of things which have nothing to do with what the MAC address was intended for. So what we're doing now with the IEEE, in the 802.11bh and BI group and the IETF and the Wi-Fi Alliance is to rethink how the MAC address is used and say, if it's just to identify a unique station, let it be that way. If you're not connected to my network, Stephen, I do not need to track you as a person. I just need to, send to that device asking me, this is where you are, and that's all you need. And then we can get analytics and all this very useful stuff for retail, etc., in a different way that is not disruptive or intrusive to the user privacy, and yet gives businesses the intelligence they need to better set their businesses.
Makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. So actually, since we already touched a little bit upon the cellular technologies like open technologies, open roaming, so another question comes into a mind. So since, let's say, 5G is now around the corner, how do you see further development of Wi-Fi? Do you see that 5G is some kind of competitive technology, or there is a way to somehow integrate with cellular technologies, in particular with 5G, open roaming, and get benefit out of it?
Yeah, Sophia, it's a great point you touch here, because I remember being old, like some others here in this call, when 4G came, LTE, we called it back then, people were saying, oh, it's over for Wi-Fi because LTE brings better throughput, etc. But if you look at the evolution of both technologies, LTE is much more efficient in fast roaming speed. They have these handoff systems and determinism in the allocation of time, which allows them to be very granular in the way they allocate traffic and rotation to the next cell. While Wi-Fi was much more efficient in terms of spectral efficiency, that is the amount of gigabit per second you can cram into a special location. And then as you look at the evolution, now Wi-Fi is adopting schemes like OFDMA, and in Wi-Fi 7 we'll have this multi-link MLD technology, which gives us closer to a 5G structure where you can be more deterministic in the allocation of time, which will make us more efficient in roaming from one to the other. And at the same time, 5G is going to the other direction. They try to increase their throughput capability and their density in indoor space. So to me, the two complement each other. It seems that both stacks are going towards the same direction. Wi-Fi is still much better in indoor environments because of the throughput we can provide that 5G cannot provide yet. 5G is still better outside, when you have long range and fast roaming requirements. So there is a good complementary story here. Maybe in the future both stacks will converge. What I know though is that LTE is built on a lot of intellectual property. So the cost of manufacturing one LTE chip, 4G be it or 5G, is more than the cost of providing one Wi-Fi chip, because Wi-Fi was developed by a community of people who didn't really take intellectual property rights for the chips. So both are converging, but it seems that one has a cost advantage to the other.
Yeah, actually, good point in terms of the business. So let's say we shouldn't expect, Wi-Fi clients and customers like massively migrating to 5G only and like using only cellular technologies rather than, let's say, enterprise type of Wi-Fi. And is that right?
Yeah, you're right. I don't think so. I think, again, we heard that 10 years ago and it didn't happen. I think some customers, might be moving to 5G, but I think some customers will be moving into Wi-Fi, from cellular technologies, where this thing that Wi-Fi provides now, the performances they are needing. I think, the market is likely to reconfigure itself a little bit because of the advantages that each is gaining in the new version will attract some people who were limited into these features to get into that technology. But I don't see any massive change in the enterprise environment. especially as Wi-Fi life cycle is 3 to 5 years, right? Every 3 to 5 years we have a new release. LTE is 10 years. So in 2030, when 6G is going to come out, 5G will have made a lot of more progress, which will make it even more efficient indoor, even faster for roaming, will allow you to have dual connections, per link, per application QoS on the dedicated link structure. So, many things that will make it even more efficient, while, 5G will just get its adoption started.
That is actually a very good one. I never thought about that. The development cycle is 3 years for Wi-Fi and about 10 years for LTE. That's a huge difference, actually.
It is, and if you look at the cost, also, it's normal, right? The ROI for 5G, because of these IPR costs, has to be driven along a longer term, right? And when you look at the price structure, we're outside of the technology here, but when you look at the price structure, it's typical that every new release of 3GPP is accompanied by a sort of bump of cost because of new technology. But then the competitive pressure makes the cost goes down. So, the time to ROI for those is much longer because you cannot sustain these higher costs for a long time. And that's what makes the LTE adoption slower also to change than Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is very, very fast. You can get the return on investment because you get so much more throughput, so much more features. That you can want to get to the next generation faster.
So we do have customers that tell us, you know what? We are still on Wi-Fi 5 or maybe even on Wi-Fi 4, but we're not going to upgrade now because our service provider is telling us that we should migrate to 5G and go with the entire company, with all our office environment into 5G. You're saying that that's not really the right decision. Is that correct?
I would not think so. To me, if you're an enterprise, it's not just a question of features, it's also a question of control. Do you want to keep control of your data, or do you want to give it to a service provider and trust that they will be providing exactly the control that you want for that data that's out of your hands? So there is the technological side and the control side.
The question is, who owns the data? Is that a good question in that case?
Yeah, you're right. Who owns the data, but also who controls it? If it's within your venue, of course you have to control, get switches, routers, all these management policies. But everything you do here belongs to you. It's under your control. So you can set, the boundaries of what should and should not happen. If you have suddenly a contractor, be it a service provider to whom you provide all control of your data, even if you have written text that says, this is what you should and should not do with it, technically it's out of your control. So you do not control that data. You trust the control is going to be done by someone else. It's not just a question of trust, right? It's also a question of technical difficulties into if you decide suddenly to do different thing with your data. If it's in your control, you are fully in control of how you make that change. If you have to rely on someone else, well, you have to rely on them. So you're dependent on their decision and their ability to do it.
Talking about control, I'm sorry, Sophia, but we are going to go way over our time limit, but I don't care because I really love this. And Jerome, we're very honored to have you with us. And with that, I want to ask you as well, I want to bring up another topic, that is the private 5G. What about that? Because private 5G solves that problem for the enterprises, or is that different?
Yeah, it does. It does provide that difference. Then, of course, now you go back to purely a question of cost, right? What kind of coverage structure do you get with those access points, and what is the cost associated to deploying and managing them? To me, it doesn't make much sense to pay a higher premium for applications that you could solve with a cheaper technology and more affordable technology like Wi-Fi. It does make sense, though, entirely when you are in a very challenging environment, being, for example, a factory floor or outdoor, where Wi-Fi costs would be prohibitive, or maybe where the technology itself is not conducive to this kind of environment. Then private 5G, or here in the US CBRS, or 3.5 gig in Germany, all those make perfect sense in those environments. And that's why I think we'll see this partial reconfiguration of the market based on these new capabilities. But I don't see that appearing in a general office building, in a hotel, all these places. I don't see that technology taking there. It just doesn't make sense.
Because of cost.
Right, because of cost and because Wi-Fi, everybody has it, it's working, it provides the service you need. So why would you invest in something more expensive to achieve what you already achieve?
Yes,
exactly.
and And you need to replace your clients and everything, and your clients are working in your home, and you don't have a private 5G network in your home.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Gotcha.
And
So, yeah.
everybody knows how to manage Wi-Fi already. So switching to another, let's say, technology stack would be, anyways, challenging.
Yeah, and Sophia, you're 100% right, because now you suddenly remind me of Steven's first question, which I only partially answered. Open roaming. Open roaming, solves these last hurdles for Wi-Fi, where we say some people don't understand that you have to get on your phone and click something to get onto Wi-Fi. Let's solve that. And then, within the cell, let's handle the automatic connection between an access point and the other at the right time, so that it's optimal always. Let's solve that to make Wi-Fi even easier. Solving these problems is what we should do, and that's why I'm less and less afraid of 5G as I see the evolution of Wi-Fi and what 5G has become.
So, open roaming, because I love that concept. If I come into, I live in Amsterdam, and we're in the Netherlands, and I'm studying. I'm part of a university. So in the university, my phone is connected to a network called Jerome. And as soon as I come to your city, Jerome, I enter the city and I'm close to university. Automatically, my phone connects to Jerome again, even though I'm on the other side of the world. That is a great example of open roaming. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. Yes. And you're lucky to have an Jerome profile. Not everybody has that. But that's exactly the concept. Creating as many Jeromes as there needs to be, and connect them all to a central system where wherever you go on the planet, even if you're not near a university, you'll be near something that has a connection to open roaming, and bam, you'll be on Wi-Fi without having to do anything.
That's brilliant. So is that being adopted now by more organizations even outside of education?
Oh yes, well, Jerome was the first global structure using this passpoint technology that the Wi-Fi Alliance developed. The open roaming brings that to even larger structure, and open roaming now has become a certification in the WBA, which is the Wireless Broadband Alliance, which has the larger operators on the planet, including Cisco, but also plenty of other large networking and service companies, and it's exploding. We see the adoption exploding. I've seen a prediction that says that by the end of 2023, more than 80% of large operators, being large enterprises, it could be enterprises like Cisco or anyone else, and larger public venues will have adopted open roaming, which will mean that if you are in more than 80% of the public spaces on the planet, you'll be on Wi-Fi without having to think about it, and even if you have never been there before.
Wow.
Well, so that's kind of impressive, anyways. So how do you see, let's say, security standpoint in this case? So let's say from one point of view, we're connected through a Wi-Fi network, which is kind of an enterprise. At the same time, we also have an access to a public network. How are we going to keep our devices secure in that case?
Oh, that's a great topic, because we spend years trying to refine passpoint in that. To me, I'm also very much involved in the privacy aspect of networking. I was the editor of the 802.E specification, which is privacy recommendations for 802 technologies. And within open roaming, we worked a lot on this topic. There are many places where you do not want to give your identity to the local network provider. If it's a shopping mall, you may not want to tell who you are. With the differentiation between the identity provider on one side, the network provider, and then a neutral federation in the middle, we can achieve that, where you can be completely anonymous on the local network. So we don't know who you are, and if you use a rotating MAC address, we don't know which device you're using either. But then there is somebody at the back who says, I validated the identity of that person. So if things go wrong, and you hack the Pentagon or something, and there is a requirement to identify who was there on that day, there is a trace somewhere that will allow to stitch back to this identity if need be. But until that day happens, it's completely anonymized, if need be, at the network access provider level, and the IDP knows that you connected, but they don't know where exactly you connected and what you did. So this separation avoids that there is this central structure where somebody knows everything about you. So it increases your privacy, and it still allows to maintain the requirements of legal intercept if you are doing something in countries where we need to know who does what for legal purposes. So that's the best of both worlds. I'm a bit long on this, but you go in some places in California, they will say, we do not want to know anything about you, because if we do, then we'll be liable if you do anything illegal. And with OpenRoaming, they can advertise that in the network, which means that when your device is going to connect, it's going to say, oh, full anonymity, perfect. I'm not going to tell you anything. And then, you're entirely anonymized. If you go to Paris, when there are some GDPR requirements on one side, but also some liability from the network operator, we say, well, you don't tell me who you are, but I need to have some place to ask if need be. And then you can use that knowledge on your device to express a different identity or differently. OpenRoaming allows all that, and that that was not in the passpoint structure. It's not yet in the Jerome structure, because it was based on passpoints. But having this larger structure allows you to have this granularity and that's privacy setting.
Yeah. Impressive. So thank you.
I want to know one more thing about OpenRoaming, because when I was studying the books that you wrote, and I learned about 802.11u and Hotspot 2.0. Is OpenRoaming the new version of 802.11u and Hotspot 2.0, or is it something new, something different?
So you're right, it's building on that. So today we say Passpoint, the Wi-Fi Alliance has renamed the Hotspot 2.0 Passpoint, because nobody understood what 2.0 meant. It's like me 2.0 thing, but people are saying, so is it version 2.0? So why you have really 3 or version 2.0 is so confusing. So now it's called Passpoint. But you're right, Passpoint is a mechanism that relies on a transport structure which is based on 802.11u amendment, and that 11u amendment allows an exchange of information between the station and the access points. We use that, but we expanded what can be expressed. We call that RCOI, consortium information that we can exchange, to allow all these additional mechanisms about do you want to be private? Do you want to get an SLA? Do you want a quality of service? Because in some countries or some places, will say, I don't want to join the Wi-Fi. The LTE is have a package, so I don't pay for more, and the Wi-Fi connection is not that good, so I'm not going to get on Wi-Fi. So all these exchanges are added into this passpoint structure, to allow this 2020 style, 2021 style modernity of efficiency between the exchanges.
Jerome, I'll be honest with you, we are way over time, but I still have a couple of questions that I want to. No. I still have a couple of questions that I want to ask you. So, is it okay that we're going to do a part 2 of our interview? Is that okay with you?
Sure.
All right.
With pleasure, yes.
So then I would say thank you for watching now, and thanks for joining us. And we're going to do a part 2 with Jerome, because we have plenty of questions to ask, and I love the answers that you're giving, and I'm learning a lot here. So
thank you.
Thank you, Jerome. Thank you, Sophia, and see you in part 2.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.